So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to build another accessory type. In this one, I'm going to be concentrating on the staff that you see here for the creature, and we'll talk about some techniques that were used to make the actual staff structure. We'll talk about how to make some of these coil structures that you see within through here, some ring structures. Then we'll use Z-spheres, and we'll take a look at how to use Z-spheres to make shapes that could give us something that will work for rope. We'll convert that over to Dynamesh, and then we'll sculpt lightly on top of the pieces for the rope. And for this part here, we'll also take a look at this section for how to create this stone here and build some more geometric kind of cuts. And we'll do it all by using a tool called the trim curve with some polygroup options on it. So this video is going to be a bit long. It's going to be a little bit over an hour, but I'm going to show quite a few different techniques in just this one video, and it starts to move a little bit more advanced. I think these are probably, it's probably getting a little bit more advanced on how you can start to use all the different tools that we've looked at, maybe introduce maybe a few new ones, and then bring it all together to really start to manipulate, make shapes, get everything kind of roughed out, and then from there, even pushing everything from a secondary and pushing towards the tertiary kind of level of detail for things. So let's go ahead and move into ZBrush and take a look at all these various tools, and let's go ahead and get started on this. Alright, I just want to quickly take you through some of these steps that were used to make this shape for the staff that I'm making for this character, and you can see kind of the scale of it. If I just run this back here, you can see I positioned it in place to get an idea if this is going to be the right scale for this thing, if it works okay. So I'm just going to put this back on solo, and I'm going to run this back in the history time slider and just show you how this was started with just depending in a cylinder like this shape right here, and then using the transpose tool, the gizmo tool, like this. And if I just step through here, you can see I always just scale this thing up. Now it's possible in deformation, I might have possibly done this, where if you go to deformation, you can tell something that you want to scale, and you can do size, and you can size it in just the Y dimension. And so that was just scaling this thing up. Now if you want to scale in 2 dimensions and not the third, so if I took size and took Y off and took X and Z and used that, I can scale the thing down as far as the thickness goes, but the length will stay the same. And so that was made that way. Then I actually just duplicated this piece and then bent it, and then merge those two things together. So let me show you this real quick. I'm going to go to Subtool, and I'll just duplicate this shape, and we've got this on solo. So you can see kind of what I did with this. I took the gear icon, and we used a bend arc, and if you find the correct bend on here, each one of these has got a different axis, and if you hover your cursor over it, you can see down at the bottom, this is twist, this is angle. And so if I do an angle like this, it'll spread it out this way. And on this one, if I do an angle this way, but on this one, if I do the green angle here, it's going to bend it in this direction. And if I give it a negative 90, let's just try to get to right around there for that, negative 90, like that, I can bend it around this way. Now there is also, instead of twist, if we do a twist, you can see how it kind of rotates it around there. It's not super helpful. But radius, we could take the radius up and down on this. And so I think what I did, I just kind of scaled it down somewhere around in here, like that. And then after you're done, if I go back to this gearbox icon and go back to the Gizmo 3D, then we can take that and I can hold down Shift and rotate that down 90 degrees. So I just took this piece along with the straight piece, and if I take it off solo, let me hide the body real quick so we can kind of see what's going on here. I'm going to drag this down just a little bit. If I go to that part, you can see how I just drug this up on top of here and then rotated it. I was a little bit off center whenever I did this. And I wasn't trying to be perfect with any of these things, just because I did merge them together and I just dynameshed it pretty quickly. So I can do something like that. Just get into place. And then I just took something like this straight piece and then said merge, and then I merged that down with that, so that would join those together. I'm just going to delete this out because we don't need it anymore. I just wanted to show that to you for demonstration purposes. Now if I keep stepping through, here's where I join them together. You can see the geometry is not really all that great as far as how it's joined together. Then merge those down. Then I started kind of tweaking the shape of it a little bit with just the move brush. Like you can see here, just kind of got a shape that I was happy with, and then just dynameshed it. And you can see it's still pretty rough. So I started using things like polish, and then if I hit Control W, it'll make a poly group out of the entire thing, and I can use polish by feature, which will act like a super strong smoothing algorithm. So I did some of that. Then I started to use inflate to inflate this thing up a bit in different areas just to get some different kind of thickness to it. And I just kind of wanted to change the shape a little bit. And then after I was kind of happy with where the shape was going, then I was like, okay, now I'll go ahead and start using the trim dynamic and start hitting some of the edges on this to kind of start to make it feel a little bit like wood. And so you can see how I started to run trim dynamic down along through some of here. And then using clay polish, again, if you hold down Control on the interface, you can see where that sits. It's under Geometry, Clay Polish. It's got its own area for that. And that just starts to sharpen up some of those details that we got on here, and kept doing the same process and just tweaking the shape. Now, here's where after I wanted to check this in the location of the character's hand, I stored a morph target on this and then was able to move it, and then I could just quickly move it to a different location. And then with the morph target enabled, let's see here, right here like this, I can go back and forth and say switch. So if I store the morph target after I was done building this, store a morph target and then move it into the location where I want for the hand, and then I can just do switch to go back and forth. And then that way I can try out, make sure it's the right size and everything, and I'm not being destructive at that point. So that got me to the place where I'm at currently, where I'm fairly happy with this, and I wanted to show you some next steps for adding some additional detail to this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pen, and I'm going to use I'm just going to use this Ring 3D, and I'm going to take it off solo. What I want to do, I don't want to see all the other objects. I want to see just these new objects that I'm working with. So I'll go to this Ring 3D, hold down Shift, click on the view icon, and then just select this part. That way it's going to, when I hold down Shift and click this eye icon, it turns off the visibility of all the other pieces. So that can come in handy. So I'm going to take this ring, and then I'm going to use the transpose tool, and I'm going to scale this element down like this, and then maybe I need to move it right up here. I think I'm going to do something like that, and maybe I'll scale it this way to make it a little bit thicker, like that. Now I could duplicate this and move that duplicate down. Now if I have a model that doesn't have any subdivision levels, if you're in the transpose tool or the gizmo tool, you can hold down Control and then just drag out and drag another copy. So that becomes a pretty nice little feature. We can push this over here just a little bit. So I could just hold down Control and drag out multiple copies of this if I wanted to do those type of details. Now if I want to move all these, I don't want to move the top one. I'm going to hold down Control and mask it out, and then I can start to move and manipulate this as 3 different separate pieces like that. So I think that'll work for that. The next thing that I would like to do is maybe make it feel like there's some kind of rope structure. So I was thinking about doing a helix structure, which would do kind of like these tube shapes, but it does it in a spiral. Now, unfortunately, we have to go to a primitive type for that, and we've got this Helix 3D. I wish we could append it and then tweak the values on here, but I don't currently know of a way of doing that. I've showed in previous videos how we can append a shape, and we can use the gizmo tool, and go into the gearbox part for that. And you can actually do primitives within there, but they didn't have Helix 3D in there. So I got to click on this, and it'll make this shape for us. If you remember, for all the different primitive types, they're all going to be very similar, where we can come down to the bottom, we can go to initialize, and this is where we can start changing values on here. I'm going to turn on the polyframe just so we can see what's going on with the topology and everything. And so we've got this number of divides on here. I'm going to do 8. I'll use either numbers like 8. Let's see if I can get this in here. I don't think I have my numlock on potentially. There we go. Yeah, that's what the problem was. So we can do 8 for that, and that works pretty well. I'll either go 8 or 16, but I think 8 will be just fine because we might use dynamic subdivs on here. So we're going to take this and change it anyways. This L divide, this is how many divisions we're going to have going throughout the duration of the entire thing. It looked like 128 was a good number that we were working with that for that. And then coverage, I guess that's how many of these wraps it's going to do around in here. So I don't know how that works exactly as far as a number goes. If you wanted to do something like 36, or I'm trying to think if we did specific numbers, if we're getting coverage in some kind of way that kind of makes everything line up a particular way. If we do hollow, I'm not sure about that. Let's do this. We got a thickness value that we can play around with. But what I think I want is maybe this profile shape. That doesn't change too much. I think what I really want to play around with is this radius, and then open that up, and you can see I want it to just be flat all the way across. So if we wanted to pull that in the middle a little bit, we could dip that down. If you wanted the radius to be a little bit fatter and through here, you could do that. So I'm just going to actually click this point, click and drag it out, and that'll make it just 2 points that we have to kind of work with on there at that point. And I think that's going to work pretty good. Now as we do this, maybe we could change the coverage value and maybe tweak that a little bit. If you want more space in between, I want it to feel like it's kind of bunching up. Now we can tap D on this. Actually, sorry, I'm not correct. This is a primitive, so will not let us do the dynamic subdiv just yet, which is a little annoying, but we'll fix that up. I think I'm pretty happy, I think, with this number. Now if we wanted this to be tighter, we could maybe up the value of this, up the value of the coverage. We might have to pull down the thickness a little bit more if we wanted something like this. But I kind of wanted a rope that felt a little bit thicker. So maybe something right around here, like this, and I'll take the coverage down till we're about here, I think. Somewhere in there. And I'll go back to this 128. I think that'll be fine for what I need. Okay, so after we have this as a primitive, what we can do now is we don't have to click Make Polymesh 3D. What we can do is go back to our model where we are working, and what I'm going to do is hit Append, and I'll append that Helix 3D, this version that we are working on, and you can see how it's going to throw it in here. Now, it just happened to fall in a pretty decent location for what I'm working with. I'm going to continue to keep tweaking on this. Now I can tap D to take a look at the dynamic subdiv on this. I'll go to geometry. I'll go to dynamic subdiv and then put this up to about 4. Now the other thing is the in parts of this. If we want this to be hard edged, we could crease polygroup on here. I'm gonna hit Shift D to show you this is just what the geometry looks like on this at that point. What we could do is go to polygroups and we could do group by normals. And if we do a pretty high number, let's go a little bit higher, like 60. I'm just trying to get these end caps broken off. Now if we go lower with the normals, you can see how it's going to take a look at smaller angles, and it's going to produce a lot more polygroups. We just need, this is almost like a 90-degree bend here, so we need something that's pretty high, about 60 or so. And you can see that the curvature on these parts are just not high enough, and so we just capture these end parts. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping for in there. So now we can go to geometry, we can go to crease, and we're going to crease polygroup. I'm going to put the crease level down to, let's just say 3, and I'll say crease polygroup. So now when we tap D for the dynamic subdiv and take a look at this, I'm going to put the crease level at 4, and you can see it should start to round out, maybe 5, like this. I'm going to go back to the, this crease level. Let me put this down to like 2. So it's going to hold it for 2 subdivision levels, and then after that it's going to start smoothing out. So we got, with the dynamic subdiv, we got 4 subdivision levels here. So that starts to round out the corners there. And that's what I'm wanting for this. Now if we wanted to inflate, we could inflate it and make it fatter. If we want to go the opposite direction, we can do that. So we can find kind of like what's the sweet spot for this. Now if I do put this on the transpose tool or the gizmo tool, I can hold down Control and go to the, sorry about that, let's hit undo. Let's go back here and let me go forward in history. Okay, I'm going to go to the unmasked part. I accidentally hit Control, I meant to say Alt. So those do different operations for us. So that's going to put us right in the middle. I can scale this thing down. Now I can just scale right in the middle. I'll do that. So I'll get the thickness of what I'm hoping for on this, and then now I can just scale up this way potentially. I'm going to scale this down a little bit more and through here. And actually, as I look at this, I think I'm not too happy with just how thick everything is. So I'm going to push this direction, pull it down a little bit more and through here, and let this kind of intersect with these things in here. And then I'll just hold down Control, and then we'll drag out copies of this, and I can kind of rotate this like that to make it have the illusion that it's kind of joined together with that part. And then maybe I hold down Control and drag out another copy of this and through here. So I'm going to let go of that. I'm going to go back to my staff, and I'm going to hold down Alt and click on that, turn off the polyframe. And what I'm going to do is just take the move brush, and I'm going to pull this in just a little bit like that with these parts. I think I'm going to go to the rope now and see how there's cracks within here. I don't want to see that, so I'm going to go ahead and inflate this till it all kind of runs together like that. Now I don't need the bottom of these coils. So there's a couple different ways we can handle it. If we tried to, we could just hide some of this geo and things like that. But I think what I'm going to do is this. There is a slice curve that I've got in my interface. I can hold down Control and Shift and then just click within here, and I've got it set on curve. This is set to slice curve right here. And what that'll allow me to do, I can hold on Control and Shift and I can drag out a line, and I can add the spacebar modifier, and I can just slice through the model at that point. If we're taking a look at solo on this, I know we've got dynamic subdiv on here. If we hit Shift D, you can see how it just sliced through that model. Now if I hold down Control and Shift and then just click on the green part, it'll hide that red part. And then on my interface, we've got delete hidden, and that exists under geometry, delete hidden, if you want to find it there. So that's going to delete out the hidden parts of the geo. I can tab D and you can see what we're going to get geometry wise for this. I could click close holes just to make sure it's closing all this stuff up, because later I think I'd like to dynamesh this stuff together, so it'd probably be good to have that. If I have any parts sticking out, I can hold down Shift and kind of smooth that out a little bit. I could smooth in here if you want. I could inflate, try to inflate that a little bit. If I saw some cracks happening, I could just go and inflate specific areas. Now with the inflate, if you can see, this pattern is very, it was pretty, symmetrical and everything. What I'm saying is it's just not very rough and organic. So if we do this inflate on different areas and we maybe take the move brush and then kind of hit this up just a little bit, we're just building some irregularities on some of this stuff just to make it look a little less perfect, a little less CG. So I think what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to this section, hold down Alt, and then click on these pieces here, and then pull this out a little bit and tweak the shape of this. So I'm just kind of finessing this stuff a little bit. And then what I'd like to do is take the rope coil part that we did. We've got that on dynamic subdiv, so I'm going to convert that over. I'm going to hit apply, so that makes it into real geo at this point. So now I've got real geometry for that. I've got real geometry for these parts, and I'm going to merge these down. And I'm just going to call this grip, like this. And then now I'm going to actually convert this over to Dynamesh. So I'm going to go by the numbers I've been using lately. I think 700 is probably a good place to start. So I'll click Dynamesh. So you can see how I Dynamesh that all over. I can hold down Shift and I can kind of smooth some of this stuff out. And I'm just kind of trying to join those parts together just a little bit. And through here, this is just a little bit rough. If you remember from previous sections, what I really should have done probably is made sure that Geo was nice and high res before I converted it over. But I know I'm going to rough this stuff up, so I'm not super concerned about it. I can just smooth some of this stuff out. Put on Damien Standard, maybe go through and redraw some of the lines in here for this part. And then if I use clay polish, I can tighten some of that stuff back up. And so I think that looks pretty decent. Didn't realize I was upside down the entire time. Yeah, so I think that's going to be pretty good. I don't really need to do too much more with that, I don't think. Might hit clay polish just a little bit more. So that's how you could potentially build something like that. I know it wasn't super clean, but again, I'm just trying to do something that feels like a little bit more organic, and there's maybe more of a simpler culture that is kind of building these things. So I'm not super concerned about it being like this perfect thing. Like if it was a sci-fi object or something like that, I would be a lot more concerned with how everything joined together and making sure everything's super clean. But in this case for this, like I said, it's stylistically, it's probably going to work a little bit better to make sure this stuff's just a little bit rough. Okay, so there's that, and then I think I want to build a little bit more deeper wood grain in here for this, so I'm going to just hand sculpt some of these things with Damien Standard. We could use that brush, or we could go find, I've been talking to you about the orb brush set, and I think that would be a really good brush to go get the orbs crack. I'm going to do the orbs crack 3 and use that one. And then what I need to do is probably take a look at from further away and see if these lines are reading. And I think they are for me. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I can push a little bit harder and let up a little bit lighter on some of these. And so maybe if I wanted to be a little bit more stylistic, I could do kind of some cooler kind of swirl patterns or things like that for this. I think that could be kind of fun for the design. So I'll just draw just a little bit more here. To me, this is, I really enjoy drawing. So this, to me, this kind of work feels more like drawing to me. But it ends up building these marks that kind of read further away. So this is definitely our medium level detail or our secondary details. So I think this can be kind of fun and interesting where maybe it's making this staff feel just maybe a little bit more mystical because it's either carvings or it's actually the way that this wood grain actually works on this. Now I can take the clay polish, hit that, linking that through there. I'm going to make my brush size a little bit smaller and then tap U to go to the intensity. So I don't want to go too heavy-handed with it. And again, with the clay polish, if we hold on Control and build out a mask, let's say I just want it to do it on this area, I can hold down Control and then click in the open viewport, invert the mask, hold down Control and click on here to blur the mask, and then hit clay polish, and it just does that on that particular area like that. So let's do this and through here. Same thing. And so I think that looks pretty good for what I'm hoping for. I might just hit this just a little bit to make it kind of feel like that's pushing that surface in just ever so slightly. And that would give us just a little bit more separation between the parts that we have. Kind of like this. Yeah, so I think that's going to be pretty good. What I'm thinking I could do at this point is just I'm going to mask this and then use clay polish. just like that. And if I wanted to make the shape a little bit more interesting, I still have opportunities to do that with, let's just say, use the move brush, and I can check this from different parts to take a look at the silhouette. Maybe try a few different things to see if I like pushing it in a particular direction at all. I'll probably like to keep this straight and through there, and we still have the opportunity with the inflate brush to blow certain areas up if we wanted to emphasize shape just a little bit more. Kind of like that. So hopefully you can kind of see these kind of curves and edges that I'm doing like this, and those are all very, very small moves. They're not really large changes, but they are just kind of tightening and just reinforcing some of those shapes to make the silhouettes a bit stronger. Like that. So I'll just check it from all different angles and make sure it reads well from all around the model. I think that's looking pretty cool. A bit more interesting. Now I remember what I did with this model before in the past was I actually like appended, I'll just put a sphere on here, and then I could move this up into this area, make it a bit smaller, maybe do something like this, and kind of turn this into a maybe more like a crystal shape pretty quick. So let's see here. I'm going to try to show you a technique real quick. I'm going to hit solo. So I'm going to use, there is a trim curve. Let me show you what this one does. If I hold on Control and Shift and click in here and go to trim curve, it's just like the slice, but if you hold on Control and Shift and you drag out, it's going to trim away whatever this shaded area is. It's going to trim out that direction from this. So we can hold on Control and Shift, and you can add the spacebar modifier, you can rotate the thing around. So just like the other curve, if you double tap Alt, you'll get a straight line like this. And if you tap Alt, you'll get a smooth curve like that. And if you let go, you can see how it's going to trim off of there like that. Now if we hold on Control and Shift and then right click, you get this option to do a polygroup. Okay, so again, the tool works Control Shift, you drag it out, it'll slice this way, right? I just added the modifier to it where I can hold on Control and Shift and then I can right click and I can turn on polygroup. Now if we do that, it will trim away, but then it also turns it into a polygroup, which is kind of cool. The other option for that on there is if you hold on Control and Shift, right click, there's a B radius as well, and it takes a look at the brush radius and it'll trim based off of the brush radius and just give you a slice like that. So I don't know how helpful that is, but hold on Control and Shift, I can take that off. So those are all the options for that. So I'm going to just trim away and then just make this feel like maybe these are like we're cutting a rough stone and we're making some kind of cool crystal shape. So I think bigger cuts probably going to make more sense for this stuff. And when we're done, we obviously won't have a sphere shape. And if you noticed, I know if I drag down from the top, I get this kind of direction with the shaded thing. But if I want to have that shaded area go in a different direction. If I drag from bottom going top, it kind of reverses the direction. So as you kind of get used to this tool, you'll start to recognize how you should kind of drag out strokes and things. And if you ever mess up, it's not a big deal. You can just hold down the space bar with it and move that whole thing around like that. So here's a really crisp edge for that. We could use something like polish. Now we would need more geometry, so we'd probably have to Dynamesh it. So if we did that, let's just take a look and explore some of that just real quick. I'm going to Dynamesh, and then I'll use polish, and you can see what we would get as far as edging goes on there. Now if you wanted to go trim dynamic on top of that, we've already looked at that before, so we could do some work like this, right? So we can do all that, and I think that's cool. I'm going to step this back till we're here, and what I'm going to take a look at is this under crease. If we do the whole crease poly group, let's just do a level of like 2 within here. If we do a crease poly group and then we do bevel, and we do a bevel edges, let's hit undo real quick. I'm going to try to do this bevel width and do it higher. And we can take a look and see if we do, let's see if we can overdrive it. I was hoping we could overdrive this. So I think probably part of the problem is just how unclean this geometry is. So what you can do is it'll bevel in between these polygroups that we've got, but yeah, the geometry is just not that great. So we'll add a different part to this. Z-remesher, if we say keep groups on, it'll recognize the polygroups. We can give it a target poly count. Let's just do 10 for 10,000 polys and do Z-remesh and see what we come up with as far as the geometry. So that looks decent, you know. I could do polish by feature if we want to tighten some of this stuff up just a little bit. So let's see what we get now with this crease if we do the bevel on here. Sorry. We got to do crease polygroup, and then once we do that, the bevel will actually work. Okay. So we can take a look. I think this bevel width, that's going to be fairly decent. So I'm getting a look like this. I know that was a lot of work just to do that part, but just wanted to show you that that exists. Now, you saw what I did there. If I do this polish by feature, if I run that, we can start to get looks like that, which is kind of cool. So this, to me, starts to feel maybe a little bit more alien-like. If we do this, it's really, really strong because there's just not a lot of geometry to work with. Now we can hit Control D to add subdivision levels. So I'll hit Control D twice to add 2 subdivision levels. And now we can do polish by feature. Crispen that up like that. Hit Control D to do one more. And then we got a really nice, pretty clean piece of geometry. I'm going to bring this back and just take a look at what we have. We could scale this up, change that a little bit. We could put on the move brush and start to tweak shape if you wanted to do that. So we still have all the possibilities of what we can do as far as manipulation of geometry. And if we want, we could use trim dynamic on this and start to hit edges and things. Now, we might not get predictable results for geometry. That process that we did gives us pretty even topology, so we're probably okay. But if you run into this position where you don't feel like the geometry is behaving the way that you want, you could always convert this over to Dynamesh and then start working that way, right? Then now I'm going to go tap my B for my brush menu and go back to that orbs crack. And if you wanted, you could add maybe some interesting fissure to this or something. Like maybe this thing got hit and was actually cracked at some point. Kind of like that, just to make it maybe a little bit more interesting. Just like this. And then I'll hit clay polish once on there, kind of like that. Then I also kind of like trim dynamic. If we come back here with that and hold down Alt, you can fill in cracks. So maybe I can taper out the ends of these things. I like to kind of do that. Maybe fill in some spots so it's just not the same strength throughout the entire curve. So I'm just kind of hitting along that just to give some variance on there. And you can click clay polish maybe one more time. And I think that looks pretty neat. Last part. So if we were going to do something that felt like rope being attached to this and then wrapping around here, that seems like it would be a pretty tough thing to do. But we've already looked at using Z-spheres as a way of creating topology, and we could potentially do that. I'm going to call this stone real quick, like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit append, and we're going to append a Z-sphere. And we should probably save our file as we get into this, just so we make sure we don't lose anything. So I got the Z-sphere. I can move this up and through here. I'm going to push it right there, and I'll scale this thing down. And let's just say this is the beginning of a rope structure. Okay. So with this, we looked at already, if we go to draw, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because we've already looked at this tool in an earlier section. If I want to have a new Z-sphere the same size, I click and drag it out, hold down Shift, and then I can put on Move. So I'm going to move this down, Draw, which is T, and then if I start using hotkeys, W for Move, and then T, sorry, not T. We want to go back to Draw, so it's Q. So I can draw this out, hold down Shift, and then I'll tap W and Q to go back into Draw, W. And remember, we can move this all the way up here, and if we want to put it on Q for Draw there, we can start to actually click on some of these pre-existing Z-spheres, and then we can just move the new ones into new locations, kind of like this. And if we ever want to preview what is going on with this, we tap A to see the preview mesh for that. So tap A for that. And I just clicked on that just so I could reset my pivot point. So I'm going to tap A real quick and then kind of fix this up real quick. If we go to Adaptive Skin, we're under Preview. We'll take the density and put that up to 4, and that will make this feel a lot smoother as far as this. If we take the dynamic resolution, that's actually being generated from Dynamesh data. So we could put this density up maybe 4, somewhere around there, and then that'll give us a nice preview of that. If we do want to see that, what it looks like converted over, we can change that number. I'll do 128. And that's going to be kind of low, but maybe that generates pretty quickly so we can just see what's going on with the geometry for it. So let's go ahead and keep drawing this out. I'll move this, right here, like that. Draw another one, move it. What I'm going to try to do is make it feel like this rope is wrapping around this and through here. So let's just generate this kind of quickly. And if this is rough, we can always add more Z-spheres later and finesse this. So maybe the more important thing is just to get the shape kind of laid out. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this over to Dynamesh after we get the shape made, and then I can just kind of sculpt on this stuff. That seems to be my more favorite way to kind of work lately. Is I just use the tools to generate the shapes that I need, and then once I have the shapes generated, then I'm really doing more work sculpting and kind of finessing that way. Okay, and then we got this here. And working with Z-spheres, maybe it makes a little bit more sense to have your brush size a little bit smaller than you normally would, just so you're only working like with one sphere at a time. Because it is possible if your brush is too large, you could start grabbing things that you don't want to grab. Let me keep drawing. I'm going to keep drawing around here. Oops, W. So I keep getting a little mixed up on hotkeys here. So W is going to move, and then Q is going to let me draw out. So Q, W, and then I'm just going to try to push this back into here like that. Let's tap A just to kind of see what we got going on. So I'm not a big fan of this. Let's tuck this under here like that rope goes underneath there. And maybe this comes out a little bit more and goes around there. So that's looking cool. Now I can just start to put it on draw and then tweak some of these out and make a little bit better curvature happen with some of this stuff. Maybe let some of this run under here and intersect. We'll do like this. So let's draw here. So you can see how we're just adding more resolution to this thing. Let's just add more here. Add more here. And now I got the opportunity to move this stuff around like that. So I'm going to tap A for that. I actually don't want this all to join together. I think here's what I'm going to do. I think I'm pretty good at the where I'm at with this. I'm going to put this down to 0, tap A, and then we can put on polyframe. We can see what's going on with the geometry at this point. Okay, so to make that into real geometry, we have to say make adaptive skin. This part does feel confusing to me, and it definitely confuses a lot of people when they start doing this. So that makes a new version. It's called skin. Whatever the name of that object was, it'll put skin in front of it and puts it up here like that as its own new object. This is where I think is kind of a pain. We're going to have to append this new skin back in here. So I can hit append, find that new skin, I gotta go slowly. This thing closes a lot. So I got skin down here, and now I can hide the Z-sphere version, and then this is actual geo that we can kind of work with here. So if I hit polish, and if I hit Shift D to go down to subdivision levels, we can start to polish this up. Now if we did polish by features, it's going to do something different. It will polish, but it looks at the polygroups and it's going to make hard edges out of this stuff. So that's why we want to use polish for this. So with subdivision levels, you saw that density that we had. That's what it's doing with the subdivision levels on here. So if I hold on Shift and go to geometry and open that up, you can see we've got 4 subdivision levels. And the power of dropping down in subdivision levels is polish is going to be really, really strong on a lower subdivision level than it is a higher one. See, like that. So I'll turn off the polyframe, tap D to go all the way up for this. And if I put it on, I'm going to show you a different type of move tool. So there is, if we go to B and then M, we've got our normal move, but we've got move topological. That will look at the topology of the object and then just move that part. So you can see the normal move brush would click and drag and move both of these pieces, but the move topological knows, like, I'm just going to grab the topology and it's going to flow out from here and here on that. So it's only going to grab that section that we have here, which is kind of cool. So we can kind of manipulate this thing a little bit easier. Now I do know with the inflate, if we do a positive inflate, it'll blow it up. But this rope to me is a little bit thick, so we can do a negative inflate and we can go a little bit smaller with it. And then now with the move topological, I can start to make these things kind of run into each other a little bit easier. I can kind of drag this down and then try to tuck that in. I can take this piece and then try to make it feel like maybe it's tucked in under here. And then maybe I take this part here and drag it out a bit more and make it fit and conform to the shape of this. Because I do want it to feel more like it's sitting on top of this, and we don't want it to feel like the rope is actually intersecting with the shape. So we got to pull some of these pieces out. We just basically got to do some finessing here to give the illusion that it is actually wrapping around and holding. Depending on the size of your move brush, if you want to do like a tighter angle, you're going to have the brush be smaller. And if we want to move more, we need the brush to be larger. Okay, I'm going to put this on inflate. And there's some parts as I've moved this thing around, I just want to blow this back up. I'm going to go back to that move topological. Push these back up. Just move this off to the side. And I'm going to try to pull this. Sorry, just hit the wrong key there. Pull this out and make it feel like that part of the rope is sitting over the top of this. So this, it becomes a little tricky to balance everything and make sure everything feels a bit more natural. Was it inflate? No. I'm just checking different areas. I'll go ahead and turn out the polyframe because I just don't really need to see that just yet, because that's not really helping anything. Let's see here. I'm looking for that brush move topological right here. I think it might make sense to have this look like it's kind of tucked under that a little bit. Maybe this is pulled out and through here. Maybe this is a little bit straighter. Okay, that was a lot of work to do this. I'm going to save this stage just to keep it around. So I got Z-sphere skin. I'm going to duplicate this, and I'm just going to rename it and call this rope. That way, if I want to save all the working parts of this, we could do this. We could just make a new folder. Call this rope build, like this, and we can keep the Z-sphere in there. So it's in here, and if I open this up, let's scale down here. This is the Z-sphere and the skin, and then we can close that up and hide that. And then now we just got the rope. Now I'm going to convert this over to Dynamesh. So we're going to go to Geometry. We're going to go to Dynamesh. Put the resolution up to maybe 256, somewhere around there. And I don't want to freeze the subdivision levels, so we'll go ahead and do that. Accidentally had a 0 on there. That's going to make a big difference. Okay, let's take a look at what we got. So we still got a pretty decent amount of geometry. This kind of merged everything together. Now we can start using things like clay tubes, and we could start to maybe sculpt on an area and make it feel like maybe there's a section for a knot. So I'm just going to be pretty loose with this. And it feels like 256 is even too high for this, so I'm going to go 128. And then that's really low. Let's go 200. Let's hit undo. Something was up with the resolution of this thing, so let's go 500. Sometimes Zbrush just does not like to behave. And we got to figure out why it's doing what it's doing. Alright, so I think I can do something like this to make it feel like there's a section of rope that tied around here. And then there's another part of rope maybe that came through here and ties into here. So let's hit clay polish. Now what we can do is with Damien Standard come through and then start to draw this out a bit more. Now it does feel now at this stage I do need a little bit more resolution, so I'm going to crank that up a little bit more. Maybe hit clay polish another time. Sorry, not clay polish, Damien Standard to draw these lines in. Kind of like this. Maybe make the brush size a little bit smaller. So I got this in through here. So I think that's getting pretty good for me. I'm not going to go too much more on this. Again, if the rope is too thick, we can do inflate and we can drop that down a little bit. Kind of remesh, maybe hit clay polish on this again. Now there's a lot of different ways that we could have gotten a texture on here for the thing looking like rope. With this sculpture, it's feeling more like everything that's hand sculpted is giving it a bit more of this stylized kind of look. So a really detailed rope texture on there might not be the best thing. So what would probably make sense for me is to just hand sculpt some of that detail in. So with like Damien Standard, maybe I'm just hitting at this level. Some of this kind of detail for the rope. And as we get in this close to it, it's got this look, and as we get further away, we're probably good to go. And again, for some of this stuff, you'll just start to work your way around the model and go, yeah, I need to finesse this a little bit more. That's looking a little bit odd. Maybe it's too thin. Maybe I need to inflate particular areas to make it read better. So you just gotta, at that point, you've got to use your artistic eye to tweak the shape. And I'm going to go just kind of, I know this is a little bit more sloppy for sure. I'm not too concerned about this detail, so that's why I think it'll be okay to move a little bit faster on some of this. Because again, I just want it to read from out here, and you can see some of the areas that I've already hit for some of that stuff. I think are starting to read okay. And now it would be good to have some additional. This is probably moving away from medium level detail and then pushing into some tertiary just because the lines are so small, but I still want it to read somewhat from this distance out here like that. So I think that's I think it's starting to work pretty decent. And with inflate, we could make surfaces run into each other. They'll blow up and run into each other, so maybe it makes the rough structure feel a little bit more believable, or maybe some things expanded away from each other. Yeah, like this. So I think that's looking better. Wouldn't say great, but better. Okay. So, yeah, that was a lot of work to just get that part, but I think it can be a neat element. Just trying to think about this thing actually holding this and maybe some of the weight distribution. Again, you can see how I'm trying to, as I move this thing around, I need to conform it to the actual shape that it's resting on. And holding on to. Okay. So there we are for that. Now if I want to move this entire thing together, there's different ways that we can manipulate multiple objects at the same time. I think we've looked at some previous sections where you can turn on this I call it like the pizza box icon or whatever, but that's going to let you manipulate multiple items at the same time. I'm just not the biggest fan of how this thing works, to be honest, because we can turn back on the visibility of everything, and you need to hold down Control and Shift, and you would have to select an object that you want to start moving. You can hold down Control and Shift and then click on other objects that you want to add to the list. So that would be moving all these objects. Really what I'm going to do a little bit later, it's probably going to make sense to have this all be one object. So I'm going to turn that option off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to merge it down with the grip. I'm going to merge it down with the stone. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to merge the staff down with that rock. And then that'll just be called staff. If I needed to rename it, that's fine. But now I'm working together with this as one object. So this would be a very last step. Now we can treat this as one object, and that's fine. Bringing everything else back, I'm going to turn all the other parts on that I want to see now. I've got the shell front. Let me turn off solo. So I've got his eyes, his side bag, his belt, the detail for his belt, which I might have to let's see here, I got a final belt here. With this final belt, then I pulled everything together with the details and sculpted on that. We also have this. Let's increase the part here, and then we've got the staff. And what I was showing with the staff is that we could, I'll delete the Morph Target. I'll store a Morph Target on it, so that'll store the position so we can still build right in the middle of the world. And then now that we've stored that Morph Target, we can manipulate this thing, and I'll just move it out. I'll try to position it in his hand just a little bit more tastefully right now for the stage that we're at, just to kind of check things out. And I'll move this thing forward and up. Kind of like that. And then maybe I need to move it out this way a little bit and through here. And I could rotate it out this way, maybe just to make it feel a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I'll turn perspective back on. And then now with that Morph Target, I can hit switch and it can go back to the center. And then if I ever want to just kind of maybe do a shot like this, I can do that as well. And so then that's kind of building out this this last piece of an accessory right here for this.